will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Croydon Constitutionalist podcast, bringing classical liberalism to South London and beyond via Twitter, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you can get your podcast. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swadling, the co-founder of the Croydon Constitutionalist.
Hello there.
Hello. And today we have a very special guest. We have Mal McDermott from the Libertarian Party. Hi Mal, how you doing?
Hi, I'm not too bad, thank you.
So Mal, it's all about you really today. We just thought we'd come along to your local boozer and have a nice chat with you. Rather like myself, you're not a local Croydonian, I don't believe, from that accent. What made you come to London, and what made you become a libertarian here in London?
Well, I suppose the answer for every Irish person in London for the past 100 years have been the same, the work. I graduated university with my degree in English and economics, so I naturally went and worked in a call centre. I got to be supervisor of that call centre, which was the highest position I could get in my hometown at the time, which was just after the financial crash. So I naturally did what every Irish person does and went to England. I went to Birmingham first and really liked it there. It's where I got into my profession now, which is payroll, just through a temp agency, through chance. Then after that, moved up here to London. My cousin was here, I had some friends here, so I decided just to move up. And from there, just progressed into payroll from there. Fell in love with the place. The original place I lived here for the first 3 years I was in London was down in Crystal Palace, so not too far away.
Home of all good football.
Exactly. And just fell in love with London from there, and I've been here ever since.
So Mal, what made you become a libertarian?
So my journey to libertarianism, I suppose you could say that started back in university. I entered university as a dyed-in-the-wool, very red communist tanky. And then as I said, I did economics, and if you can understand 3 of the classes in economics, you won't be a communist anymore. So by the time I got out of there, I was centre-left in my economics and drifting further and further, more liberal as the years went on. Eventually then I started writing my own politics blog, and gradually as I wrote more and more, I found myself repeating myself more and more, and the changes that were happening, although the place was different, maybe the company was different, the systematic problems that were in place were exactly the same. It was the same things that were causing them all the time, and that just gets depressing after a while, so I decided I would try and do something about it. So I started looking around for a philosophy that suited what I was thinking at the time, and that again took about 6 months to a year of working my way through various stages of minarchism and direct democracy to eventually fall on libertarianism as my core belief. And from there I got in contact with the Libertarian Party here through Sean originally, and then Zoe later than that, and then I was set up as London leader, so here I am today.
Indeed, and you are today the London leader of the Libertarian Party, and thank you very much for writing for our website last year and for coming to speak at our My Tuppence event back in November. Much appreciated. Now you mentioned obviously, and it's quite clear from your accent, and the fact that we're all sat here drinking pints of Guinness doesn't give it away as well. You're
harder to see on a podcast.
We're live streaming this. Get with the times, Mike. Obviously, you're from the Republic of Ireland. We've got the Irish elections coming up. Lots of people in England don't really understand Irish politics at all. We have a bit of an idea about Northern Ireland because the DUP can hold the country to ransom at various times and what have you, and there are some people who choose not to take their seats in Westminster. But in terms of the Republic of Ireland and politics there, what are your thoughts on the upcoming election? And perhaps for your English viewers and listeners even, you could just give us a bit of a background on the way that Irish politics works or doesn't work, and the involvement of the main few parties there.
So it's quite interesting in Ireland, where you do have a two-party system like in most European democracies, but unlike most European democracies, our two-party system wasn't shaped by the usual dichotomy between conservatives and socialists and that left-right divide. Ours comes from our civil war and the side that were taken on the civil war. So the Fianna Fáil would have been born from the anti-treaty that created the Free State, and then Fine Gael were on the pro-treaty side, and that is quite literally where they diverge. Their politics are quite the same. So really what we have is a centre-right party and then a further right party, kind of as our two main parties. Now they've been in quite a precarious position at the moment, with Leo Varadkar leading a minority Fine Gael government, which meant he had to rely on Fianna Fáil to vote with him in order to get anything through. It's been quite helpful for him in the past few years that Brexit has come through and pretty much unified the country in a way, definitely in an overtly political way. There might be subversive elements that I know of that are very anti-EU, but they are still, unfortunately, very much the minority, which I still find surprising. But this is being great because Fianna Fáil would then vote with them. But as in terms of how strange that seems, it is like a minority conservative government with the help of Labour. That's how peculiar it is in Irish politics, and so it was never going to last. And so we are leading into a very decisive election. Now, the course that's been taken in terms of Brexit, in terms of being pro-EU, I don't think that will change. It will either be Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil with a majority, and it's looking more and more likely that it will be Fianna Fáil, as sometimes people get tired of the blue team and they just switch to the red team, and then they do that for another 8 years and see how that goes, and nothing changes. So with Irish politics, then you will have them more left and left-wing parties. So Sinn Féin have really come through in the Republic in the last 10 and 15 years as a very centre-left voice. You have People Before Profit, these various left-wing alliances, and because we have proportional representation, then you have a lot more of them being represented in the Parliament.
It's quite surprising hearing there are two right-wing parties, and obviously I've heard this before. It's not something I immediately think of with Ireland. Now, I know the low tax rates and the Celtic Tiger kind of came through there, and that's obviously a set of right-wing economic politics, but my impression, and Phil, and absolutely correct this if it's wrong, is that actually the social provision in Ireland is more akin to a social democracy.
It would be, yes. I mean, things have got liberalised a lot more, but again, that is in the past 25 years. I suppose you could almost look at kind of the divorce referendum as the kind of turning point with that, the kind of, I suppose, people who are opposed to it would see it as a slippery slope, but that the complete then liberalisation. But you can link that to money, to people just having the ability to be outside of that, and the waning then power of the church, these institutions having kind of crumbled in the last 20 years again, from the 90s, from 95 to 2005, the church went from the staple of the community to now being something that has to beg people to kind of come and go to it. It's been a huge cultural shift at home, and so you do get that. You get that kind of strong American influence of these kind of low corporate tax rates, of kind of Reaganite kind of privatizations of various state industries, but then at the same time there is this massive push on the left to have social welfare. I mean, when I look at what social welfare is here and then at home, there is just no comparison. I think it's still almost €200 a week as basic social welfare. and that's continue on indefinitely. So you get these things that they're kind of wrapped up into that kind of nationalisation. They're presented more as kind of national benefits rather than socialist benefits.
So I think, and again, you're correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the reason why the equivalent of job seekers allowance is so relatively high is because it was brought in originally for agricultural workers when they couldn't work because there was seasonal labour effectively. So it was like the average weekly wage was that, and that's what it's kind of stuck to. So it isn't really the same thing. It's just society paying them when they literally couldn't work because there wasn't the work there to do for seasonal reasons. But I think it was very interesting to hear what you had to say there about the waning power of the church. I think historically a lot of the things which, certainly since the Second World War in England, have been taken over by the state, whether it be the National Health Service and things like that. I think the church was providing a lot of those matters, sort of charitable type organisation, whether it be hospitals and education and things like that. But now, as you've seen with the power of the church waning, and they're obviously not got as much money and what have you, these people who really are socialists are now trying to take power for the state. So in terms of Brexit, you mentioned it's kind of brought many of the politicians in the Republic together. How do you see Brexit working out for the Republic of Ireland?
I think, although they've been very much opposed to it, now that it's happening, I think much like with the EU, there was a great picture during the week of one of the EU delegates signing the papers, and it just really didn't look like it hadn't dawned on him yet. It's just ashen face kind of. So it is that thing. They're just going to have to deal with it. I don't think it will be as bad. They will have to have a workaround. They will have to work with it. Now my hope is that when they see what the UK is able to do outside of the EU, that it will be a wake-up call. And especially if further implementations of tax, especially the corporate tax rate, of unified income tax rates, of the increases that will now, because the EU is losing 20% of its GDP, it's going to have to make up that money somewhere, and Ireland has just literally in the last few years become a net contributor into the EU. They're now going to be expected to pay more, so there is going to be that backlash, and especially when the state or whoever are still not providing the services that people think they should. There's been a health crisis in Ireland from as long as I knew what the words health crisis were. They just have never been able to get it right. Whoever they've put in there. Now the fact that they use large government contracts to waste huge amounts of money has obviously not affected anyone, and not influenced it in any way, but we try. But yeah, it is that thing, yes.
I was just to say, my understanding is Irish economy, it's reducing the share of the economy that's exported to the UK, it's based on exports to the UK. It's still a fairly significant part of the Irish economy. Do you think that the businesses and the politicians in Dublin have kind of got their heads around that fact that there's probably going to be some barriers to trade come the 1st of January 2021?
I think I would hope that they would, and I honestly can't see intelligent business people, some of whom would have been there in the 80s with the border and who are now here again, where one may come back in and there may be, as you say, barriers to trade, that they're going to have to deal with that. And that is a reality for business owners in Ireland, and I would be extremely surprised if no one has thought about this. Now, as for the politicians, they have been talking about this for so long that it would be weird if they weren't doing something in the background, if they hadn't had made provisions for this. I think it's been so highlighted, it's been so out there that it would be impossible not to, but maybe there's some out there who are ignoring with their fingers in their ears.
I thought it was interesting in the immediate aftermath of the Brexit vote that the then Taoiseach, was it Enda Kenny, was that the chap's name? He seemed to be disappointed with the result, but seemed to be prepared to engage with the British government in a proper manner. As soon as Varadkar got in, he seemed to take a much more combative approach with the UK, and I do wonder whether that was because perhaps the EU authorities have said to him, we're going to let you keep your corporation tax low for a bit longer if you play ball with us. I don't know whether you've got any opinion on that or heard anything about that.
For me now, if that were to happen, that would strike me maybe more as a difference between those personalities, but at the same time, what you're saying would make sense chronologically. But to me, what you had with Edna Kenny was an ex-school teacher from Mayo, so at the back beyond the wilds, and would have known people and would have known his area, would have been very rural, very socially conservative in that way. And with that, I suppose, comes a certain level of respect that would be clouded by Leo Varadkar, who is more kind of Dublin liberal, ex-doctor, so kind of another strata in the social class, kind of that more, as we saw here, let's say here he would be a Lib Dem supporter, would be more Leo Varadkar's style. So that would strike me more, and then kind of his desire to stay in the EU would flow from that, and he would be more willing to be openly opposed to it, and be openly belligerent towards to it.
So you're the London leader for the Libertarian Party. I'm just wondering, what's the plans for the Libertarian Party in London? What's your breakthrough plan? How are we going to see libertarians popping up around the capital?
Well, first things first is we need people to come to our meetups. Definitely, we tend to just try and get our ideas across. If we can just get people talking about it, the more people that are saying the word libertarian, the better we are and the better we are placed. Really, that's what we're doing. I mean, our breakout for the moment is to get people involved, to get people talking about classic liberalism, about liberal ideals, bringing them into the actual things that are happening in London as well, where we have these new corporation taxes, where we have these new regulations on what can be the cars that can be driven in the capital. These things, these kind of auto diktats that come down from our glorious mayor to the rest of us, that we have to follow, they're not being challenged, and there doesn't seem to be a strong enough voice in politics, and that's what I wonder as well with the Conservative candidate, is that even though he is talking a good game, he's not. It is maybe solely focused on one issue, whereas I worry about him on other issues. Is it just going to be more of the same with him?
So what's that issue that you're seeing a focus on from Sean Bailey, the Conservative?
So from Sean, I'm seeing just it is a focus on crime, and on knife crime especially, and that's not to discount that. That is possibly the number one topic as well, but to have an election clouded by a single issue, you will get people maybe voting for people that they don't want to. Again, I'm sure a lot of libertarians may have voted for the Conservatives in terms of Brexit. That's what that election was about to them. That was about getting Brexit done. That's not to say that they support the Conservatives. So to even be a voice for those other people, to say, well, we voted for this, but we still need a group, we still need a place to tell people, look, you need to make these changes. These things have to happen because we're not content with you just doing that. We have other things. We have an agenda elsewhere as well.
So, mentioned their knife crime. What's then is the Libertarian Party approach to dealing with knife crime in the capital?
So we believe that everyone should have a form of self-defense with them. At its simplest, to have a bottle of pepper spray. There should be no young woman walking home in the dark on a London night without the means to protect yourself. You shouldn't. They say that you shouldn't be afraid to walk down the street, and you're never going to do that with police officers. You're never going to do that with security cameras, unless you do an East German thing and have 1 in 10 people be a spy for the government. You're never going to be able to achieve that level of protection that you can. But what you can give people is the means to protect themselves. I love those stories about. There's some great stories about people who have survived knife crime. I think that was actually down in Croydon or maybe around Selhurst, where they then set up a school of self-protection, of actually teaching kids how to protect themselves, how to defend themselves, because it is that thing that you can pass as many laws as you want, but criminals don't follow laws. That's what makes them criminals. So you can tell them you can't. It's illegal to own a handgun. It's illegal to own a machete. It's illegal to own a car bomb. Whatever. You can do that, but that doesn't stop them using it. All it does is it says to ordinary people that if we happen to catch you in this position with this thing. I literally saw a picture the other day of a council having picked up a butter knife and saying, we're taking this off the street. I mean, it's just...
And you're really not. I believe there are at least half a dozen in my drawer
Yeah, exactly,
at home.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was about to turn myself in, like.
And it's interesting you mentioned Sean Bailey there. I don't know, and Dan or yourself, any thoughts here, but he's calm without the flash, and he's saying Mayor Khan is he's spending money on the wrong things, he's making the wrong arguments, but he's not. They're not really seeing them saying we're changing the policies, and it just he doesn't feel like he's making that breakthrough or made that breakthrough moment yet.
No, until he actually kind of comes out. I mean, I've been attacking Sadiq Khan for the past year on the London Libs, and I can tell you it is one of the easiest jobs in the world. You just type Sadiq Khan into the news feed every morning, and you are guaranteed to have something to use against him. It's just a political miracle he's still there. But that is the thing that I've noticed about Sean as well, is he's, I think, riding on that coattail, on the idea that so many people might be fed up with Khan that all he has to do is show up and he will get it. And that's a really unfortunate place to be, because again, he can just lazily decide to not change policy and just carry on.
I mean, I think with this, it's interesting because Sadiq Khan spends a lot of time talking about how Donald Trump is terrible and how we should stay in the European Union and things like that. Now, last time I looked, that wasn't his responsibility. He's basically in charge of public transport and the police. That is the job of the mayor. And yes, I suppose if you happen to have the Olympics, you can wave a flag or something like that. But, we don't get them that often. So, just stick to making the trains run on time, mate. So, in a sense, the actual day-to-day job is a little bit boring if you think about it. But I suppose what you're perhaps saying you're looking for from, say, Sean Bailey or anybody else is more of a vision. I guess, and I've not seen what he said specifically on knife crime other than it's bad, but presumably the alternative to what's been going on is to bring back, pretty tough stop and search, I would imagine, because that's been proven to at least cut the crime. It may have, in some circumstances, negative effects on community relations if you don't do it in the best way. But it seems to me that Sadiq Khan is more concerned about community relations and is not concerned about young people stabbing each other. So I don't know how the Libertarian Party would go about dealing with that. I put something forward in terms of stop and search. What does the Libertarian Party think about that?
So again, I think Sadiq Khan looks at this from a kind of a UCLA sociologist's kind of version of events, that these things are systematic and structural and whatever that Marxists say about these things. And that's why he came out and said, what was it? It'll be 2 generations before this problem will stop. You know?
The kids won't be around that long.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, that's 30 years of people stabbing each other in the streets. That's not good enough. You know, you do see him do these things. I take umbrage with his paid ads that I see on Facebook. There's been 2 where he's been asking people to do the work that he should be doing. There was one where he was asking people to go and work with charities, to donate to charities to do things in an effort to reduce homelessness. And one of his mandates, one of the things he was elected on, was reducing homelessness. And it's just so cheeky and underhand and sly to say that, kind of to use people's guilt as a weapon for something that you're either unable or unwilling to do, when you can spend 2.5 million on anti-EU fireworks. But in terms of what we believe would be that solution to, well, not a solution as such. I mean, solution is such a big word to use. But what would help reduce it is to get people out there, to get self-defense courses going, to encourage that, to have people at least available to have a self-defense weapon. The likelihood of you walking down the street, I was talking to a friend of mine on Wednesday who had been attacked on Monday, and when he asked the police, and this was in a very well-to-do part of Westminster, and he asked the police what happened, kind of, you looked prosperous. Now, it doesn't take much to look prosperous. You can be going on a night out, you can be going to a wedding, coming from a funeral, you can look prosperous. But if at the other back of that criminal's mind is that person might have pepper spray, person might have a self-defense weapon, this is not going to be easy, then you've raised the stakes in such a way that they will turn away, that they won't do that, and you're creating that deterrent.
No, thank you. You raised some interesting points here around the job of the mayor. And obviously, traditionally, the way parties get going in politics is to get councillors elected and possibly win a council. I think of the Greens in Brighton, UKIP in Thanet. Libertarian, I think in terms of the Libertarian Party, might be a way off that for the moment, but a libertarian worldview is very different from the what's allowed by statutory diktat for councils today. So I wonder if you were running candidates for council, or if indeed you ever to run a council, what might be given the constraints, what might a Libertarian Party do in that scenario?
Well, it's interesting, actually, and I was really thankful for you for sending me this question early on in the week, because I did get to read up on it, but I kind of came to some interesting conclusions after that, because I had my own idea of what we would do and how that would work. And it is kind of, it's always going to be pushing for what we have within our power to do, to lower rates, to lower council tax, I think there have been councils in the past that had a council tax of 0. You can do that. This is not impossible. To make sure books are balanced, to make sure there's not borrowing going on. I mean, this borough here is in the red. So it's Labour. Anyway, but it's actually a Conservative majority now. But a council should also be able to preserve the things that are worth preserving. That was the other thing I came across. Now, a lot of the obligations on a council are mainly reporting, but there are 2 kinds of provisions almost in there. There are kind of more socialist and socially aware provisions, and if people want them, obviously that's fine, that are kind of to provide housing, say, for the needy, for the elderly, etc. But at the same time, one of the diktats from local government is people's right to buy, and that's huge for us as libertarians, to make as many people sole homeowners, independent homeowners, that don't have to rely on the state, and also reduces that burden then from the state to do any maintenance or anything like that. That's now someone is responsible for something, so you've made a responsible citizen with that, and that's something that needs to be protected. So if you're going to have social housing, then you should also have to have the right to buy. So it's about protecting those things that allow us to achieve libertarian aims, as well as trying to reduce as much as possible what's within our power.
That's interesting. And then I suppose the flip side of that then is what happens at a national level. Now, Brexit's getting done. We're, as we speak, less than a week away from leaving the EU. We have the transition period, but a year is not a very long time in politics or in government. It's a long time in politics, but not a very long time in government. So once we finally get out, what do you want to see? Boris is in power. He's got a good majority for the rest of this term, possibly even another. What would you like to see the Conservative government and Boris focus on? For me, as you know, a libertarian, to be in any way optimistic about a government is, you know, a bit of a stretch. But I'd say I have a 5% optimism. But yeah, I think there are some good people. The Guardian is talking more and more about libertarianism, which is wonderful, because it means it's at the back of their mind, which means it's at the front of politics. It means it's actually in there. And it's not just kind of monetarists and Friedmanites now. These are libertarians. These are Missians. These are Austrian economists that are in there, kind of in government. So, kind of, there are other things as well. I'd like to see a written constitution. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that could be changed, that could happen. But the other thing, most major thing that I'd like to see is monetary policy. So the monetary policy at the moment is the same that it has been. We have this fiat currency that's based on nothing, that is printed out constantly. It's just thrown around, and its value is based on very little. It's based on people's perception of this economy and of this country. And as we've seen in the last 4 years, that can fluctuate wildly depending on who's investing, who's able to buy big chunks, and who's able to sell them. So when you're on those kind of whims, your currency is very much teetering all the time. And if you're constantly printing it out and just throwing it at people, then you're going to run into inflationary measures. And inflation is a tax on people. I mean, if inflation is 2% every year, you build that up cumulative, your pension is worth nothing to you. So sound money to have even competitive and some kind of limited level currencies for people to be able to use more Bitcoin, gold, silver, things like that, maybe even on high level transactions, but some kind of stability in monetary policy has to be key, because we've had Mr. Carney in power for a long time there, and it's just another neo-Keynesian. He has really put us in a very dangerous situation, because Brexit is going to be precarious, and we do have to be prepared for that. The EU is going to be vehemently against us and is going to use every trick and trap it can, and economics is going to be at the front of what they're going to do. So we need to be prepared for that, and sound monetary policy is capital to that. Oh, fantastic.
Well, thanks very much for your insights on Irish politics and Brexit and of course the Libertarian Party. Thanks, Mal, for that. We'll be looking forward to working with you and the Libertarian Party, amongst others, over the next year. Thanks very much for your time, and let's have a few more pints of Guinness.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much.